Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. My name is Elyse, and it is my pleasure to host live today a phenomenal councilwoman right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, during Women's History Month. And just to start out, before I bring her on, I'd love to share a little bit of information about her background with you all today. If you don't know, this young lady, after her work in 2016 as an organizer, Meeka walked away with a few takeaways. Meeka believes we need to engage in communities with more authentically, particularly Black and Brown communities. The question is, how do we engage with communities authentically and civically? This has been her inspiration for inviting people into democracy. For Meeka, that has been the impetus of seeing herself in democracy. In her role as a community activist, Meeka has served as an executive board member, fundraiser, steering committee member, and mentor for great local organizations like Women Helping Women. Muse Women's Choir, Make a Wish, UMADAOP, and Dress for Success. As a trainer, facilitator, and consultant, Meeka has designed and delivered learning topics to professional community high school groups centered on professional image and development, workplace safety, self-esteem, and empowerment. She has worked with organizations such as the City Gospel Mission, Having the Courage to Change program, the Urban League of Greater Cincinnati, Free Store Food Bank, and Cincinnati Public Schools, Western Hills High School Awake program. Politically, Meeka has worked on local and national campaigns to elect top progressive candidates during the 2016 presidential cycle. As an organizer, Meeka has very active in registering. She's very active in registering hundreds of voters in the Cincinnati area. In 2013, Meeka was nominated as a member of the YWCA Rising Star Leadership Academy and served on the Rising Star Advisory Committee. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome Meeka Owens. Everyone take a moment and welcome Meeka Owens. Very good. So, good morning, Meeka. It is my honor to have you here today. You are one of our council women here in Cincinnati. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone viewing and tuning in today?
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you so much, Elyse. I am just honored to be here with you this morning on this beautiful Saturday morning. And so thank you for the opportunity to chat. I think you covered a lot. You know, I am someone who was born and raised right here in Cincinnati in North Avondale. I came up in a family that was a hardworking family, union household family. My dad, I remember him going to work before the sun came up every single morning. And my mom, she's retired from American Airlines. So hardworking folks. I learned that value at a young age. I went to some great public schools that I know that have made a difference in my life today, including Schroeder Paideia, and North Avondale. And I've been a local girl in terms of education, went off to Miami University and eventually got my master's from Xavier University. But a part of my story is also that I've been a single mom and raised a son here in this community as well. And so he's now a firefighter in the Air Force, very proud of him. And so I know the value of what it means to live in community, want a safe community, want to find housing that's quality for families living here. I've been a small business owner, including consulting work that you've mentioned. I've also run a Mary Kay business for several years. And so for me as a woman, just looking for things to help empower and grow, it was certainly one of those integral pieces in my life. And then at some point, staying very active and involved. Again, I was raised in a family that believed in giving back and having a strong faith tradition and all of those things. I discovered that in this landscape of the political spectrum or civic engagement, that requires you to show up to make a difference. Because if you're going to see change, if you want to see change in your community, then you have to elect leaders who reflect the values that you hold. And so that means you've got to engage. And so worked on, volunteered here and there on some local campaigns. But it was 2016 that really made a difference for me, where I decided to organize. And I organized for the Ohio Democratic Party, also in conjunction with Hillary Clinton's campaign for president. And so it was a life-changing moment for me, because I was on the ground, active, boots on the ground in the community that I care about, helping to elect leaders here locally. And so from that point, I decided to go into local government, because I believe that you truly have to show up in systems in order to make a change. And so after 2016, I decided to join the administration of Aftab Purival, who then at that time was our clerk of courts, who now is our mayor. And so we did a lot of great things in terms of providing more transparency and access to the court system, providing services that people really need to navigate there, while also making the courts more reflective of the diversity that we find in our community. And so representation matters. It was in 2020 that I kept being inspired to show up, because, role models for me are people like Stacey Abrams, who can show us that you can be an elected leader and also making sure that you are elevating the importance of our right to vote in everything that you do. And so in 2020, I co-founded the Greater Cincinnati Voter Collaborative, where we quickly brought together over 50 nonprofit organizations and faith community organizations to help people navigate voting in a pandemic, where it was so confusing. It was a moment of where we saw, primaries being rescheduled, right? The first time that many of us have seen a situation like this ever. And so, for me, it was, what am I going to do to help defend democracy and build democracy? And so that was a part of my response. And so as a result, we help people navigate through, what does it mean to vote by mail? What is a drop box? Where's your county board of elections? How do you fill out an absentee ballot request? All of these things. And then we also help to get people to the polls. We drove over 100 folks to the polls as a result of the volunteer capacity and energy and effort that people displayed in 2020. And so we want to continue that work on, because voting is our fundamental right that we should always be protecting and exercising, and making sure that we are bringing people into democracy by inviting them and meeting people where they're at. And so fast forward, here I am now serving on Cincinnati City Council to provide my leadership on issues that I care a lot about and that I hear the community caring a lot about. And again, remembering that diversity and representation matters. And so we have to see that at every seat, at every level of government. So I'm really honored to be able to help lead Cincinnati at a time such as this.
Awesome. What an introduction. I'll tell you, we've got viewers. If you have any questions or comments, there's a chat area where you can share your comments, and we would love to address any questions, etc. We have Meeka Owens, Councilwoman, with us. Meeka, you really brought forth a great introduction, and you shared a lot of information. The fact that you're from Cincinnati, that you attended Cincinnati Public Schools, Schroeder, and what was the other school that you attended?
North Avondale.
North Avondale.
Montessori.
Very,
Yeah.
very good schools. And I've had,
Graduated. Yeah, and I have to put a shout out to my alma mater. I graduated from Purcell Marion in
woo,
Walnut Hills.
Purcell, Marion, yeah. So all of those very good schools, being in the neighborhood. So you have a lot of skin in the game. You're not someone who, transplanted to the area. You are the area. You're from the area, which is really great. You hit on a lot of great points. The importance of showing up and building democracy, and being a woman. This is Women's History Month. We're wrapping this month up, and a lot of it was built on the fact of having voters' rights, which you have. And I'll tell you, on the point of showing up today, For those of you who may know, I had surgery 2 days ago, and in spite of like my oral surgery, my face is really full. But you're right, we have to show up in spite of and still be on point because it's all about legacy. So, talk to me a little bit about. You also mentioned the fact that you're a single parent. Talk to those women who are tuning in right now. What you did to persevere, being a parent, having work responsibilities, having to provide for your child. Your son is in the military and working in such a great capacity now. What were those aspects that you attribute to your ability to persevere, keep going, and succeed?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it certainly was not because of my own resources, but it takes a village, right? That old adage, it takes a village to raise a child, and so I had strong people around me, my family, to help me do that. And I actually became a mom while I was in college, and so it was one of the most toughest moments in my life, but it was also one that taught me about perseverance and determination, because I went on to graduate on time, and just again because you have support and people that believe in you. But I'll also say that when I think about the global landscape of what it means to support people in our community and elevate people in our community, it was through entrepreneurship that I learned how to also be savvy and, empowered as a woman and learn new skills. And, I think about when we lift community as we climb, how well are we supporting young Black women or Black women in general to be entrepreneurs, to take chances. And so, investing in organizations that are helping to do that, because on a larger scale, we're talking about let's change wealth inequality in our communities. Let's change the trajectory and the landscapes of our community to be pillars of success, right? And so when I think about my work on council, these are the important things that I get to, move on and create legislation and opportunities around. But it's about the environment. It's about what we are providing access to, and supporting people. And so it's about access to education. It's about access to good workforce development opportunities so that we are truly building into people. And we see that return in our communities. We see people being able to get good wages, because jobs are created that are providing good sustainable living wages. It's about how organizations are helping to talk about minimum wage, and how do we raise that to a standard, even though at a local level we have no direct legislation ability to change that, but we can have conversations around what that means for organizations to lead independently in doing that. And so again, some of my work on city council is that I can use my leadership to help influence these important conversations. So it takes
Wow.
everybody.
You are hitting very heavy on some key topics. I mean, you talked about legislation and the opportunity, and for you, what it's about accessing education, workforce opportunities, great wages, having those conversations about wages, raising them to a standard. This really hits home specifically for our African American community, our minority community, and it's very good that you're in this role, being able to drive these changes. So, what are some of the things that you're doing today to help advance around those topics? Because we all know individuals that are impacted by not having equal opportunities, by being treated differently and not fairly. So, what are some of the things that you're doing in your role as a councilwoman to help advance those topics forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to just add there as well, in terms of your question, and how I kind of navigated through being a single mom. It was also childcare, right? That was such a critical component for me to go back to school and be a full-time mom. I had to have childcare. And so
Wow.
it's organizations like 4C. And as we see, beyond this pandemic and getting people back to work, childcare is one of those really important places that we have to continue to make investments in. And it's also about transportation. And so, how are we connecting people to the most important resources that they need? Food, housing, jobs, healthcare, education, all of those things. And so, my work on city council is around all of those issues. For one, let's just talk about in housing, right? I mentioned that earlier, but being able to find a place to live, right? Um, I understand what it means to be on CMHA's waiting list and to wait 3 years to get to the top. Like, that is my lived experience. And so to get to the top and not really see the quality that I wanted to see. But it's about this entire spectrum of housing. It's about being able to, one, create opportunities for affordable housing projects in the city. It's about being able to create middle income housing in the city for the people that teachers, nurses, everyday folks that we know, service providers like officers, police officers, and firefighters. Like, we have to have housing that reaches that income level as well as market rate housing. And so, housing is a critically important issue that this city council is working on. But how are we going to pay for it? And so, being able to identify funding sources that have been new funding sources that we can add to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund that will help us move some of these things forward. We also have to be able to create space around increasing our housing stock in this city in order to make sure that everyone at every income level can find a safe, quality place to a roof over their heads. When I think about transportation, I sit on the committee, climate, environment, and infrastructure. And so, when we think about all of those things, one, climate action, climate change is real. And so, what do those impacts mean for our community? And so, leading in a space around, climate equity and renewing our Green Cincinnati plan, which is our sustainability blueprint, and all of those pieces. But it also connects to transportation because we've got this amazing infrastructure bill that it's going to bring billions of dollars to communities to do things like connect your community better. And so in Cincinnati, we're thinking about how do we connect 52 neighborhoods where people can walk and bike and get around safely. Within this infrastructure bill, which is a huge opportunity, it's also the sustainability of the connectivity that we're talking about. And when we're talking laying equity underneath there too, so investing in neighborhoods that have not seen all of the investment, have been disconnected, what does that mean for us as a city moving forward? So these are a lot of, again, the things that I am working on, not only just as a member of council, but also leading the committee that I chair. A part of that too, for me, something that I was very passionate about coming into office was being, and as a single mom, the impetus is, mom of a brown son. Every time we hear about someone getting shot in our communities, it hurts
Absolutely.
my soul. And
Yes.
so I also knew that coming in to office that we've got to do so much around gun violence. And it's going to
Mm,
take a full pronged approach. It's going to take resources. It's going to take us really recognizing the trauma that exists in communities as a result of these incidents. And so, declaring gun violence as a public health crisis was something that I initially did, supported unanimously by all of council, as well as the mayor, of course. And so, being able to carry that work forward and at a systemic level, a systems change level, what are the things that we need to be doing? And again, this is something that's going to require stakeholders to continue to be at the table, to bring more people to see what that change model really looks like, while we're also figuring out how do we pay for these things, right? And so talking about the budget is such a critical part of the work, because it's about how, again, we pay for transformative things in the future. And so we're going through our budget cycle right now of being able to prioritize the things that we are seeing as the most important pieces to help move our community forward, while also thinking about how do we continue to add revenue to the city while working on a deficit, right? And so lots to do on a little on a little budget, but
yes.
I'm confident that we will get to where we all want to go, because we're going to be diligent enough and disciplined enough, and have the right conversations to make sure that we get there.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, transformation for the community is the only way forward. And, years ago, I too am from Avondale. I grew up in Avondale. I grew up in South Avondale. So we have that in common. Transforming our community is definitely what it's all about. We rely on our leaders, our community leaders, to drive that. And you're right, there is a small budget. You have such a huge undertaking. The whole council does, and just what you've shared with us and unpacked with us is quite a lot, to balance out the budget, what the priorities are. For you in your role, how do you, because some people look from the outside and think, oh, it's just a vote, they get together and it's done. How do you assimilate what your priorities are and advance those to the council? What's your leverage to really speak up? You're extremely articulate, you're very educated, you're extremely accomplished, you have the wit as a parent and then a single parent. How do you assimilate and drive those priorities on your plate to leverage that within council?
Yeah, that's a great question, because nothing happens on council at an individual level. Uh, it takes a lot of people to get things done, and so if we're thinking legislatively, it takes a majority to pass something. And so one of the benefits of this current council is that we ran as a slate for us, that as Democrats, and so the majority of us elected to council meant that we had relationships, working relationships coming in. And so that also meant that we had similar ideology around what are the issues that are impacting this community that we need to highlight. And so, because of that, right, we don't have to discuss or debate the importance of gun violence or climate change, right? And so, it's a matter of one, doing the work to get it to the place of legislation or additional research that we have to do. And so those relationships really, really matter. Now, how we get the work done as well, we're all individuals that are all very passionate about particular things, because that's the value that we bring to city hall. And so we're able to leverage getting the work done, because it's not just about one person doing the work, it's about all of us doing the work. And so when I know that my colleague is leading in this particular area, I don't have to put so much energy, but I'm there to do the work and provide the right vote when it comes time to moving that forward. And the same goes with my office. The things that I'm leading on, my colleagues know that they can work on other things, right? And so that's how we are approaching this, namely around the budget, something that we just kind of prioritize and really created a new kind of streamlined thinking, was what are our priorities as individual offices, but collectively. And so when we put those together and we're able to communicate that to the administration, who's then able to factor that into their process as they're getting ready for the budget, then it's kind of like we're all communicating. And so that's really important. One of the lessons that I've learned working in local government is it's very easy, because we're talking about institutions, to fall into the mantra of this is the way that we always do it. But in order to create change, we've got to do things differently. And so we can never be afraid to be innovative and to take different approaches to how we impact systems. And so that is something I will continue to have as really like my guiding light as a legislator. As a
I
legislator.
love it. I think innovation, the engineer in me, innovation is the only way that we advance forward. I mean, and to dream, to be able to execute upon dreams. That's how we advance forward, and to fan the flame of that individual that comes up with the idea and encourage them instead of denouncing it. And I think that our leadership in the city is doing a wonderful job in that. And so your work is making a difference. So you just You are very, what I call, extremely equipped for your role. So, in
Thank you.
your
I appreciate
preparation
it.
in 2016, I think that led to a lot of what you're doing today. What were some of those lessons that you learned during that time frame as it related to helping one campaign to developing your own?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, just from a tactical standpoint, I learned, here are the behind the scenes. Here's how a campaign on a presidential level is run. And so the phone calls that have to be made, the doors that need to be knocked because you're talking to voters, the community engagement and events, the constituents that you engage and bring along, the voters that you register and bring along. All of those pieces are extremely important. Some of the lessons that I also walked away with is we've got to continue consistently communicate in communities of color to engage them in the democratic process and not just at the presidential level, not just every 4 years, but all politics is local. Absolutely. It means the decisions that impact your lives are happening at the local level. They're happening right on Plum Street. And so it's important that we continue to build a civic infrastructure that allows people to get involved at the local level. There's such a disconnect between voter participation at, say, a city council level versus a presidential level. And we've got to be able to fill in that gap. Here in Cincinnati, this past election, it was about a 27% turnout, which is not great, right? Thank
Mhm.
you for everyone who did come out and vote and who consistently votes at the local level. But we've got to see more people engage. And so for me, it's a responsibility of elected leaders to be out in community and doing that work, right? For me, you'll probably hear me always say, and I've said this just along the way, I am an organizer at heart. And so I'm always going to think about that kind of foundation in terms of, bringing people along. And so, again, it's the work that we do not only in City Hall, but what we do outside of City Hall. And for me, going back to co-founding the Greater Cincinnati Voter Collaborative, it's the long term work that we are willing to do to create a more civic, sustainable civic infrastructure.
I love that.
Um, yeah.
So, Mika, if people are interested in helping and getting on board and volunteering with the civic organization that you founded, how do they get involved? Are there needs that you have today? Are there
Yeah.
areas where you say, hey, I could use individuals that, can do X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, absolutely. We have again, because when in 2020, for example, when we drove so many people to the polls, we didn't want to stop there, right? It's because we have an election going on all the time, and so transportation might be an issue for people all the time. And so something as simple as getting involved with our Rides to the Polls program, something as simple as helping us go out and register voters. And so you can go to cincinnativoter@gmail.com specific to that group, the Greater Cincinnati Voter Collaborative. And we're doing really great things there. Again, it takes people to show up and be advocates. You can certainly always reach out to my office at City Hall as it relates to the issues that are important to you. Because I am always willing to hear from the community and partner in that way. And so my email is Meeka.Owens@Cincinnati, spelled out, -oh.gov.
Okay, let's see if I can put that in here. Mika.Owens at Cincinnati. We're going to include that for everyone if they need that. -oh.gov. So we will add that in the chat for those that may want that. And then you also mentioned Cincinnati Voter at gmail.com if
Yes.
you're willing to help with rides to the poll. And
Yes.
I'm
Register
making a
voters. And it's
mm-hmm.
nonpartisan, my work with Greater Cincinnati Voter Collaborative. So anyone who just appreciates and values democracy, please reach out.
Very good. Okay, so I got a quick question for you, and I'd love to share some pictures and images here shortly. I also know you from presenting Mr. Humphreys, a pillar in the community, the founder of RLH Humphreys
Oh,
Pageants
yeah.
Unlimited. You were presenting an award to him um, during recognition of African American of Black leaders in Cincinnati. Truly, he is a former police officer, traveled internationally. He founded that pageant to give a platform for women, young ladies here to build self-esteem right here in Cincinnati. Tell us about your involvement in the Miss Black Cincinnati.
Oh my goodness, that my involvement there and being blessed to be have become Miss Black Teen Cincinnati in '94 was one of the most integral moments of my life, leading me to this place right now in my life. And so I had to take the opportunity to recognize, as you said, a pillar in our community. It was a place for me as a adolescent, as a teenager, Black young woman, learning about my identity, learning about self esteem, learning about talent, and being on a stage where that was highlighted and celebrated for
Mm-hmm.
young women that look like me. And so those are the kind of spaces that we have to support and create in order to lift up community, right? And so identity matters. uh, Again, I can't speak enough about what he has done over these decades, the lives he has, the young women's lives that he has poured into, and creating a safe space to feel confident, to feel welcomed, to feel celebrated, to feel loved. He certainly is a surrogate dad to me and to so many others, and so I was honored to be able to honor his work and highlight what he has done for so long. And I would
Very.
encourage young women to get involved in that pageant. If you have ever thought about, wow, what would it be like? Just do it. Just get involved. I don't have the contact info to reach out, but RLH Pageants, Facebook, and you probably have it, Elyse. Same goes for running for office, right? Just show up, get involved, volunteer. And at that time where you are thinking about it, just do it.
I love it. I love it. Is there any, well, let me just share with our viewers, if you're interested in the Miss Black Cincinnati, there are two. There's the Miss Black Teen Cincinnati, which Meeka was Miss Black Teen in '94, she mentioned. And then there's also Miss Black Cincinnati. So if you're ages 13 to 17 and are not a senior, you fall within a category of Miss Black Teen Cincinnati. And there is information on my following. If you'd like to get that, just reach out here. If you are 17 through 23, I want to say, and are a senior or higher college student, then you fall within the category of the Miss Black Cincinnati. So that date of the upcoming pageant, both are held on the same day, is on the 21st of May. I want to say I'll make sure that I do post that information, but definitely let either one of us know. The reason why I brought that up is because of the experience, and you nailed it. You said the self-esteem, the stage, learning articulation, how to present yourself, the professionalism, the poise that goes along with being a woman. This is Women's History Month. And oftentimes we are looked at in one category, but we are full of talents and giftings inside, and to be able to present those with confidence, this platform does allow that for you. So, also with City Council, you talked about City Council. So, how would you recommend someone to get involved? And what is there an age that's ever too late?
Yeah, well, there's legal parameters around, how young you can be in running for office. So there's that. But leading up to that, get involved on a campaign, volunteer, help knock on doors, make phone calls, do all of the things that are required, show up at events. That's kind of a training ground. It's where you learn that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. And if we are moving democracy forward, it means, and I'm not making this partisan, but it means you are staking a claim on what your beliefs are. And then you show up and you act on those beliefs, right? And so what that means is, yes, you find a space to do that. You find a
Mhm.
candidate to do that with, right? And it's okay, of course, to be in the middle sometimes, uh, but at some particular moment, you have to take a stance about something, some issue. And so going back to the intrinsic value of, in order to effectuate change, you elect leaders who reflect your values. So what are your values? Who are the leaders that are reflecting that? Support that so that you can allow democracy to continue. And then learning along the way, there's probably things that you become most passionate about. Get behind those too as an issue. Show up at the state level, at a national level. All those pieces matter.
I think we're seeing a lot of those results. For example, the whole advancing and moving things forward. This hits home with me, the Crown Act. What are your thoughts on that?
The Crown Act.
Yes, with our hair and the texture, how individuals will not be judged or mistreated. I mean, it took a while for that to actually come through, and that's on a whole different level. But if there weren't individuals that were behind the scenes saying, hey, we observe one group of individuals being treated differently over something that they can't change, we would never have that ability to say, hey, you cannot treat us different. It took someone to recognize that and to really advance that and be willing to speak out and speak up for that. And so
Absolutely.
for me, I mean, it really hit home because my texture is different. There are all sorts of needs and things that hit our community, and the involvement that you're in, the driving legislation, it really means a lot. And it goes to, I mean, across all levels, like you said, from city all the way up to the federal level. And so that's important. So I'd like to shift to, let's talk about voter registration and the importance of being registered and what you have going on about with voter registration today. Women's History Month was founded over women being able to vote, and Black women being able to vote, because at one point in time, Black women were not. And here we now have Black female council members, and our vice president is a Black female. So, talk to me about voter registration.
Mm, thank you. So,
Mhm.
voter registration is the first step that one must take in order to participate. In order to really put your voice into the mix, if you will, to raise the things that are important to you, you have to be registered. And so what that means is here in Ohio, you can register online by going to, here in our county, Hamilton County Board of Elections.gov, I think it is. So the county at a local level, the Board of Elections is the agency that runs local elections. In Ohio, you can go to the Secretary of State's website and register online there as well. And so once you do that, and I think you need an ID or another form of information. Nonetheless, once you do that, you are then ready to vote. And so from there, it becomes, okay, how do I engage and pay attention and all these pieces? Now, on one level, this is the work of the Greater Cincinnati Voter Collaborative, of being able to provide and elevate and scaffold these educational moments and opportunities. And how does that look? How does it look different to, to people that need something different? How do we engage differently? So nonetheless, it's then, connecting with the organizations that are doing that work, NAACP and League of Women Voters and YWCA, like so many who are partners in this, all in, Action Tank, Cincy, all of these really great organizations. And so those are places where you can start to get information. And then you show up at election time and you cast a ballot. You learn about candidates. So nonetheless, it starts with registering to vote. And then guess what? We have to bring other people along with us to do that.
That's
So
right.
invite your friends and family to register to vote and then to show up and to participate.
I love it. I love it. So basically, just like they say in an airplane, first you secure yourself, then you help
Right.
others. But the bringing someone else along is so important. I mean, how would we advance if we don't bring someone else along? So, very good point there. And if individuals aren't registered to vote, they can go online and get registered. But there's so much momentum now because we're facing now redistricting. Scenarios, ways to cut out the vote. People, look, and I'm not saying this for me, I'm saying this for Elyse. If you are not aware that your ancestors sacrificed and died for you to have a right, and that you need to take advantage of that right. If you're not taking advantage of it, you're missing all of the momentum to push us forward. There are people counting on you not showing up. I'll tell you this, Meeka. I have always remained registered to vote. And then I got married. And when I got married, the instructions were to make sure that you update your name and social security and then go do your license. I went to the license, and at my age, right here, near 50 years old, I was told, oh, well, we need to make sure that it's done in Social Security. I said, oh, well, thank you for letting me know. By the way, may I speak to the individual that owns this place because they're individually owned? And before that person came out, another lady stepped over and said, oh, no, she can go ahead and do her license if she's followed that step. Imagine if it was someone younger. Imagine if it was someone that wasn't informed. It is critical that we know what our options are, that we know what's right, and that we drive the change, and that we ask the questions that are necessary to ensure that we're not slated against things that are rightfully ours. Voting is critical, ladies and gentlemen. If you are not registered, you want to make sure that you get registered. And as Meeka has shared, you can definitely contact her office, nonpartisan, and get any of the questions that you have answered. Meeka, you have such a great platform. I have written down, you've got best in class. You talked a little bit about housing and then racial equity. In fact, you talked about housing as a parent. Where are we at in Cincinnati as it relates to housing? How are we doing? Are we meeting the needs? Do we have a number of those that are homeless? How are we doing with housing right now?
Yeah, well, one, we're making, this is a council who is prioritizing housing in this city, and so we're making some steps. We're getting there, but we've got a ways to go as well, because again, we're talking about housing across the spectrum, and so low income housing, middle, and then market rate housing. Part of the conversation too is around how do we increase wages for people, right? How do we provide access to good paying jobs for people in this community? But we certainly have to make sure we're increasing stock. We certainly have to make sure we're protecting people who are our legacy homeowners who have been in communities, helping people to fix up homes, to maintain value there. There's so many pieces to it. We should also be talking about what it means to provide renter equity. And so
Mhm.
models where you can start building, accumulating, you know, wealth, if you will, or accumulating equity while you're also renting. And so we got to look at a multitude of things. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach in how we get there, but we do have a way to go. And so some of you might be thinking about the study that said, here's, we're thousands of units short in terms of affordable housing. And so here at the city level, some of the things that we've done was say, okay, well, let's look at a study that will allow us to know what affordable housing has occurred, let's say over the past 5 years, and where has it occurred. And so being able to really level set, dig deep, look at the details, and have a good picture, a good landscape of where we move forward. But again, we do have a ways to go.
I remember years ago they had the dollar project where you could get a house for $1. It was the condemned housing, and that was a way to redevelop our communities. And you had to be eligible to get a loan to redevelop that home, but that really brought people into home ownership. I'd love to see that those kinds of projects come back if they're capable. But yes, housing is very important, and I know all too well, as a former single parent, mother of two, it's critical. And I know what it's like to have to make those decisions, and I know what it's like as a director with the Cincinnati Public Schools to deal with parents in the school district that if they only had their own home, if they had stability, how much
Mhm.
more the child could benefit from that. So housing
Absolutely.
is definitely very important. So what?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to add this to Elyse as it relates to, homelessness, which is something we have to completely eradicate and work on. It's also how we're able to allocate resources towards prevention of homelessness. Sometimes
Mm,
eviction is
mhm,
this critical component that is the reason why so many people are not in homes,
Mhm.
because our eviction rates are far too high. And so we've got to be able to work on that preventative side, as well. And so, again, when we look at this landscape, it takes multiple stakeholders to do that. It takes
Mhm.
things that need to happen within our court system. It takes resources to be able to help, mitigate that situation. And so, some of the CARES money is still flowing through to help people there, but we also have to think beyond that as well. So just
Mhm.
wanted to raise that also.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's a good, very good point because I know an individual that was paying their rent on time, not behind, and the owner of the home knew that he could get more money off of selling the home and went through a process to try to evict the mother, single parent, out of the home, and she eventually had to move. So I think that the prevention part is critically important in moving into home ownership. So totally agree. What about racial equity? That is one of your platforms as well. That hits home with me so much. Tell me about what you're doing in that area and what it means to you as well.
Absolutely. Racial equity means what are we doing intentionally to undo systemic racism, right? That shows
Yes.
up in everything. It shows up in education, housing, uh, business, every level of life. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as legislators, as policymakers, we have to be intentional about that. So, what do the numbers tell us? As a city, how are we making progress around women owned minority businesses and opportunity to participate in development and all of these pieces that are happening? For housing, it's undoing redlining, right? Undoing zoning policies that only allow for a certain type of housing and really don't allow for other people to come in, haven't allowed for other people to come into communities. How do we balance that, right? Those are all things that we have to look at. How are we, again, supporting Black entrepreneurs in this city as we talk about, building wealth and changing the landscape? And so there are organizations and partners that we can continue to develop a stronger relationship in. How do we make sure that we are getting people certified? Like the Urban League has a program where they help people go through the certification process. And then how are we making sure we are connecting with those people, those women, Black people, in order to be considered as the city makes decisions on procurement and who we do business with, all of those pieces. And so, again, this is an ongoing conversation within every system that we can think of, right? When we look at gun violence, disproportionately impacted are Black people, Black men, right? And if we don't do
Mm-hmm.
concerted things, have a concerted effort and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that and know that we have to support Black men in getting jobs,
Yes.
in going through the educational system, right? Like, what are we talking about? And so let's
Mm.
get really real with that. When we're talking about climate change, right? And we're looking at what are the things that we need to do to make sure that the communities of color that have historically been disinvested in, what does that look like when we're talking about decreasing asthma rates that are disproportionately impacting, people of color and communities? What does that mean when we're talking about tree canopy and where we need to
Mm.
actually plant trees to help improve air quality? All of these pieces, racial equity has to be at the lens of everything that we do, because the numbers tell us is that
Wow.
that's
I
what we
love
need to
it.
do.
The data, the numbers tell us. So let me ask you this question. Someone like myself, let's say if I wanted to get started into um, development, getting into ownership with, let's say, housing within the city of Cincinnati. You mentioned there's a program at Urban League that certifies you. What path would you suggest someone, if they're interested, that perhaps would be a good start for them?
So the program from the Urban League is around certification to be a minority, a woman-owned minority business. So that there's that certification, which is great because often it's government is bureaucratic and clunky, and so to have someone or an outlet to be able to help someone navigate through those things, that's just an extra part of the process. Cincinnati Development Fund is doing a great program that helps to really establish a cohort of Black developers, minority developers who have no experience to some experience, and really be able to lift that and train. It's like those are the things that we need to build capacity around. And so again, it's how well are we establishing these relationships? It always goes back to resources. And so
Hmm.
that's another part of the conversation, but it's those types of things that we have to put attention around. Community action agency, learning that they actually help people become certified to be daycare providers, right? And so how are we building those pipelines? Again, workforce development is so key. And as it relates to the infrastructure dollars that will start flowing through more and more through cities, jobs are going to be created as a result. And so, how are we making sure? And something that's very important to my office and my platform is how are we developing those workforce development strategies to make sure that we have people that can actually help bring these projects online.
I love it. I love it. So tell us about what does Councilwoman Meeka D. Owens do for fun? How do
I
you
love that
spend your
question.
fun time?
Yes. Well, these days, I tell you what, I love, coming off of a hard campaign and being out there and doing all the things that a candidate should be doing. I certainly love my weekends these days. I have reclaimed time a little bit. And so I certainly value being at home. I am an introvert. And so my energy I draw on at the end of the day, being at home, reading, praying, meditating, watching Netflix, being in my sweatpants, all of those things. So beyond that, and certainly I am valuing my weekend time before going back into campaigning. So taking advantage of every single moment I can get. The other thing is I love, I'm a foodie. I love great culinary experiences. I love participating in the arts. We have such a vibrant arts community, philanthropic community here in this city, and so of course I love taking in a show, symphony, opera, ballet here and there. I love movies. Again, restaurants. I love hanging out with friends and enjoying new places, and so that's what we should all do. When we think about reinvesting back into our city, particularly after this pandemic, as we are still working through this pandemic. What does it mean to go out and support the independently owned, minority owned businesses in this city? What are the new things that you can discover in this city? And so this is such a gem that we have. There are great positive things happening in Cincinnati, and how can we continue to support them?
I love that. Okay, so I have another question for you. Um, what is the last thing that you would say? I believe that when we learn, life is full of learning. It never stops.
It
You
never
learn
stops.
it, then you master it, then you teach it to someone else. So what would you say is the most recent thing that you've mastered? I've heard a number of them, but what are some things that you personally feel that you've mastered?
That is a great question, because again, yeah, life is always evolving, and we are lifelong learners. I think for me right now, I think I've mastered feeling comfortable in my identity and who
Ooh,
I am and my
wow.
values, because this platform of being on
Yes.
city council is one that it wraps itself up in that, right?
Mhm.
The way that I my life experience and the way that I approach things are because of what I've lived. And it's because of, I care about other people who may have a similar experience, and just broadly the community at large. And so, if those values don't show up in the work that I am doing, then I am not I am not here for the right reason. I'm certainly here for the right reason because I am prioritizing that. And so being able to be in chambers and speak from a space that, is value driven, is really
Mhm.
important. So,
I love that. I absolutely love that, Mika. I mean, you have just very impressive. Even during the presentation of Mr. Humphreys, I felt good inside seeing you shine because there's many of us very articulate, very well written, extremely prepared. And I'm not talking about just prepared because you did something the night before. I'm talking about all the years. See, some people think that individuals things just happen. But no, everything that we've been through, all of those volunteer hours, all of those, like you talked about, signing people up to vote, all of that, calling people on the phone, that encouragement. I would say one of the things that, and I continue to try to master this, is inspiration. That's my platform. Really helping people move beyond mediocrity. Mediocre is not good enough. We should be thriving, living our best life. So
mhm.
some people don't realize that they're limited and they buy into limitation. But you definitely are authentic. And I love seeing you in action. So I do
Thank
have,
you.
let's see, we talked about that. What would you say? I have another question here.
Mhm.
What's Councilwoman Owens, what is your superpower? One lady said her superpower was dancing. She loves to dance. I got a cousin that does line dancing. I mean, a lot of followers, and she's just naturally good at it. What's your superpower?
I love that question too. My superpower. Let's see. A couple of things come to mind. I naturally think creatively. And so, one of my superpowers, I think, is being able to really write my thoughts down. Like, I am one who loves a sticky note. I love a whiteboard. I love post it, flip chart paper. And like, those are
Mhm.
the things that help me to just like get it out and see it. I'm very visual. And so I think that helps me to continue to stay grounded and rooted in whatever it is that I'm working on. So I think that's my superpower. I also will say that I think one of my other superpowers is being able to remember and being on the campaign trail that I need to sharpen my skills in this area a little bit, but being able to remember names and faces um, is
That's
certainly something that I
wonderful.
think I do well at times.
I love that because, a person's name is so important to them. And sounds like you're very great with coming up with ideas, getting them down on paper. And that's the hardest thing. I really encourage individuals to ensure that they jot down. Typically on YouTube, you'll find at least once a week some kind of video where I'm saying, hey, your goals, or jot these down, or I've jotted it down for them. But you're able to do that. And that is very rare. That's a gift. And that's amazing. So remembering names and faces, wow. I have to say a person's name at least 3 times in a conversation in order to remember it. That's an area I got to work on. So, yeah.
That's
So
what it takes. Whatever little trick can happen. Yeah. Yeah.
that's very good. What's next for Councilwoman Owens? What should we expect next from you? What's
Wow.
upcoming? What's next?
Yeah, well, upcoming, again, we're working through budget, and so a part of this process is hearing from the community. Um, a part of this process is also making sure we are prioritizing the right things. So that in itself is a process. We'll be talking about what we are doing around gun violence. Again, we are going for systemic change here, systems level change here. And so sometimes you have to do things differently. Uh, Again, there's so much work. You're going to hear about Green Cincinnati, how Cincinnati continues to lead in terms of climate action. in helping us to do the innovative things, the smart things. Cincinnati has had this plan, since 2008, and it just keeps getting better. And so, really excited about what that work looks like in Brown and Black communities as well, because we know that those are disproportionately impacted places. And so, there's going to be lots more. You will hear about vehicle electrification, as again we build a city that is able to support that. So lots of good stuff happening, that's for sure.
Very good. Well, I have some photos and I'd love to share with everyone. For some reason, I did not format them properly, but I will attempt here to move us into a setting where, let's see if I can share. Give me just a second. They're photos of you, and you can kind of, as I move through them,
Do
explain
some
what.
commentary.
Yes, you can commentate
Cool.
and tell us what they are. So let's see if I can, it looks like I'm gonna have to share my screen. So let me get the folder up here and let's see if I can share this with everyone. Hang on just a second. I'm just gonna share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so this first one here, let's take a look.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yes, this is
Okay.
you.
Yes, I didn't know if you were blowing this up anymore, because it's small on my side. But it is me at the neighborhood summit event, which is where invest in neighborhoods. So the organization that really helps to be the anchor point for all the community councils. Every year, it's this summit about bringing community and policy leaders together. And so the particular session that I am in is the one about environment. And so I got to talk about what we're doing in that space.
Love it, love it. What about this one here? Can you
I'm
see
not
it?
sure if I can tell which.
This is you at the podium. It looks like at City Hall.
Okay.
After
Yeah.
is
Okay,
behind.
yes. So if we're just going down the line, yes, that is me with the mayor and other city leaders and colleagues that were announcing the Green Cincinnati plan that I mentioned, which is the city sustainability blueprint, because climate change is real and it's impacting our air quality, our stormwater, all of these things. And so we were announcing that city council is planning to move that forward.
Very good. Okay, let's see here. Okay, what's the next one here? Oh, look at there.
So is that me standing with another young lady?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that was the same day. And, it takes people, great mentors and women who have gone before you. So that is my dear good friend, Carla Walker, who has done so much in the space of environment and climate issues. And as a Black woman, it's so important that we continue to be a part of the conversation, because as Brown and Black people, historically, we have not been a part of that conversation, not because it's not important to us, but because we need to keep talking about it and people that look like us. And so she is someone that I certainly admire for her work that she's done in the city and nationally, and probably
Absolutely.
internationally too.
I love it. I love it. Let's see. Oh, look at this. This is you with a group of individuals.
Yeah, so that's at the neighborhood summit. And so what they did was this part of the program was doing speed dating with your council members. So it was so cool because we all sat down at a table, myself and colleagues separately, and then we would just have people come to the table every 5 minutes or something. And so it was really nice to be able to engage with people on this very kind of quick popcorn, way. But it was really
Hmm.
energizing. So that was a lot of fun.
Love it. And this is at the same location?
Yes.
Very good. Wow, looks like there's a lot of people there and you're
Oh
very
yeah.
engaged.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Very
look at
heavily
this
attended.
one.
Yeah. So is that the girl in the mayoral chair, the big chair?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was so fun. So, one, just to tell you about Riley. So, I attended a conversation on the West Side about gun violence, and so again, it's so important to show up. When we're talking about these important issues, and so I talked about at that meeting just the gun violence, declaring that as a public health crisis, and that resolution that we passed, and so just being there in a very supportive role. And so after that, as I was walking out, Riley comes running up to me and she says, "I am so proud of you." We're talking
Oh,
about a third grader, right? Who was
oh,
there with
wow.
her mom, understanding community. And she just really touched my heart. And I said, "Riley, I am so proud of you." And I said, "You have got to come down to City Hall, because it's so
Mhm.
important that we are providing space for young people to understand
Yes.
their part in democracy and that we value them." And just a little story too. And so this is Riley coming to City Hall. We hosted her for a couple of hours. She got to meet, my colleagues and the mayor, and of course, sit in the big chair in chambers. So I hope she had a good time. It seemed like she did. And just the importance of making sure, and I intend to do more of that, by the way, but just the importance of making sure young people are impacted by that building and by the people who are in that building. As a young person myself, I participated in youth and city government. At that time, Roxanne Qualls was the mayor. So I remember being in chambers and listening to her.
Yes.
And you just
Mhm,
never know. Of course, at that
mhm,
age, fourth grade, third grade, I don't know. It wasn't like I'm going to run for city council one day. You just never know the impact when we provide access to young
mhm,
people. And so, again, so
mhm.
important. So I was so happy to have Riley there. And so were my colleagues.
Very nice. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at you. I love it. Are those the Bengals cheerleaders?
Those are the Bengals. We are so proud of our Cincinnati Bengals for the accomplishments over this past year, going to the Super Bowl. We look forward to them continuing that work and being in the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl. And so this was the celebration, the rally that happened shortly after the game. And so we were at Washington Park, thanks to the leadership of some community stakeholders and the mayor. We were able to make that happen. So the Bengals, of course, you can't do a rally without the Bengals.
I love that. Oh, here's another one. Looks like you're out in the community.
Yes, and I can't really tell what that one
Let's see if I
is.
can expand this one.
Yeah.
It looks like you're observing a couple of folks speaking, maybe a resident, one of our city residents here.
Yes, yes, that's what it was. So I was going on a tour with Over the Rhine Community Housing, and
Mm-hmm,
so they are really a local developer, smaller CDC that
mm-hmm.
helps to do affordable and market rate housing in the city. And they're such an important part of our housing landscape, and what they've been doing to revitalize, OTR, keep people in their homes, all of those really important things. And so I had the opportunity to meet a resident and just talk to her about her neighborhood, her community, and the things that were important to her.
Wonderful. Looks like you're with someone else.
Yeah,
Is
another
that
great.
Avondale?
Yeah, that is another great woman, Toylan O'Neill, comes from the huge O'Neill family, and so that particular moment, we were celebrating her, I think, uncle. Their family is so big, but Reverend Russo O'Neill, of
Mm-hmm,
Rockdale Baptist, so a
mm-hmm.
street naming, and so that was that day. So it was an honor to be with the O'Neill family and other community leaders, and so they're a great family doing great things, and I look forward to hearing more about the work that Toyland is doing in the arts and culture space. So,
Wonderful. Look at this amazing picture here. I love this.
ah,
Absolutely love it.
yeah, so that's me talking about the excitement of the Green Cincinnati plan. So that was that press conference.
Very good. The Green Cincinnati Plan.
Hmm.
Who's this right here? This is a group of
Yeah, so
individuals here.
So that happened not too long ago, where we were invited, city council, invited to University of Cincinnati student government body. And so it was kind of a meet your city council night. And so just great, again, being in a space with young people who value democracy and government. And so was happy to meet some young, energetic young people.
Very good. Very good. Oh, look at here.
Oh
So,
yeah, this last one was Bachfest. So Bachfest in its 30th year, I believe.
mhm.
Bachfest, celebrating our wonderful breweries and craft beer here in the city. So it's a big deal. And so we did the parade right before, and then it's the blessing of the beer. And so it was just a lot of fun. And so I was actually the special guest in the parade. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
had the opportunity to also read the proclamation from the mayor to establish, Bachfest weekend. So,
Love it, love it. Wow. So you were definitely out and about and really engaged in the community. And it's just so amazing to see you have blazed a trail, one in which many can follow. You have shared with us today some nuggets. You've allowed us to connect with you, even personally, sharing with us your superpower, things that you've mastered. I connected with you even further on the single parent side. That path is unlike any other. And then raising a Black son,
mhm,
the concerns and gun violence and all of that. So today has been an amazing day. I'm gonna tell you, um, I really look forward to us doing this again
for
because I want
sure.
to get deeper and deeper. And as we talked about, we do have the Miss Black Cincinnati upcoming. There are ways that people can get involved with the legislation that you have on your platform to volunteer, as well as get involved with some of the results of what you've already blazed a trail in terms of driving change for in our communities. So, having said that, do you have any closing words that you'd like to share with those that are viewing today?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Elise, for providing this type of platform for people, and particularly highlighting women in this month. And so thank you, because it's so important that people have a variety of outlets to get information. And the same goes on my end, being an elected leader, to be able to communicate across multiple platforms. So thank you. I just want to really leave with people that you have an impact on what happens in this community. One, because of our fundamental right of voting and holding people accountable to the things that are important. And so as I shared with the young people at UC, democracy is a participatory sport. It's not one that you sit on the sidelines and watch what happens, but you actually become a part of making things happen. And so, feel free to reach out to my office with thoughts and ideas, of course. But this is your city. This is our democracy together. And so we can
Mhm.
only make this community a better place when we all show up. And as I've mentioned, the Green Cincinnati plan, I'd love to invite you all just to go to the city's website. Some of you may have never heard about Green Cincinnati and this sustainability blueprint that's world class. Go to the City of Cincinnati's website and just type in the search Green Cincinnati plan. It's 88 recommendations on how the city can continue to move forward and lead on climate action. And lastly, I will say, as we celebrate women and history, um, if you are ever thinking about running for office or thinking about how do I just get more involved, just show up. Again, help out a campaign. Help on an issue that's important to you. That's how you get started, because your voice matters. So, thank you.
I love it. I love it. So, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Thanks for
simply
having
my
me.
one, this is purely positive conversation, recognition of those that are creating history, making history, driving history right here in Cincinnati during Women's History Month. My name is Elyse. I'm helping you take off any limitations and move beyond mediocrity so that you too may live and have a quality life. Everyone, thank you for joining us. You can check this out on Facebook under the Elyse page, under the DR Celeb page on YouTube, and there it's also on LinkedIn as well. So if you have any questions, check in the chat. You can reach out to Councilwoman Owens, and her office would be glad to assist you. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks.